Greetings and welcome to the third and final season premiere of Romeo on Shakespeare. I'll be with you in just a moment, but I have a pair of headstrong twins here who, for some reason, are determined to go out to sea this evening. Please give me a moment so I can see if I could talk some sense into them. Why in the world would the two of you want to go out to sea with such a terrible storm on the way? I realize that you're both still mourning the loss of your father, but it's almost like you have a death wish. Perhaps you're not seeing straight because of your grief, so I'll tell you what I see when I look in the sky. I see trouble on the way, and there's more. I even see earthquakes and lightning. The bottom line is, I see bad times today, and tomorrow's supposed to be even worse. I don't know if the two of you are deaf, but I hear hurricanes are blowing, and I know in my bones the end is coming soon for you two. They're calling for potential downpours, and I fear rivers overflowing. I also worry that the ocean will prove too much for your puny vessel, and in that howling wind I hear the voice of rage and ruin. All right, if you won't listen to reason, I truly hope for your sake that you got your things together. Look, I'm not trying to scare you, but if you're really crazy enough to go out in that rough water, I hope you're quite prepared to die. If you think I'm kidding, you can see for yourself it looks like we're in for nasty weather. Sebastian, Viola, I prithee, don't go around tonight. I'm telling you, I see the bad moon rising. The sea is very rough, and well, I fear it's bound to take your life. Look, as you can plainly see, there's a bad moon on the rise. If you've ever seen the movie Roxanne starring Steve Martin and Daryl Hannah, then you probably know that it is a remake of Edmond Rostan's 1897 play Cyrano de Bergerac, in which the title character is too self-conscious because of his big nose to think that his beautiful distant cousin Roxanne could love him, and so he woos for her in somebody else's name. In Twelfth Night, Orsino sends his page, Viola, to woo for Olivia, and she falls in love with him. But because this is a comedy, we know that in the end there will be happiness and marriage. So let's take a look at the plot. A young woman named Viola is shipwrecked on the coast of Illyria and comes ashore with the sea captain's help. She fears that her twin brother Sebastian was drowned, but with the help of the captain, she disguises herself as a young man named Cesario in order to enter the services of the melancholy Duke Orsino. Orsino believes he's in love with the Countess Olivia, who is mourning her brother's recent death. Olivia is also melancholy and vows she will not accept love or marriage proposals from anyone, including Orsino, until 7 years have passed. Orsino then uses Cesario as a messenger to win Olivia's hand in marriage. But Olivia falls in love with Cesario, putting Viola at odds with her professed duty. At the same time, Viola realizes that she's fallen in love with Orsino, creating a love triangle since she loves Orsino, Orsino loves Olivia, and Olivia loves Viola, disguised as Cesario. We're also introduced to several other characters, including Olivia's pompous and arrogant steward Malvolio, Olivia's drunken and outrageous uncle Sir Toby Belch, another would-be suitor, his silly companion Sir Andrew Aguecheek, Olivia's servants Maria and Fabian, and Olivia's witty fool Feste the jester. Sir Toby and Sir Andrew drink and revel late into the night, disrupting the peace in Olivia's household. When Malvolio chastises them for their rude behavior, Sir Toby famously retorts, "Dost thou think because thou art virtuous there shall be no more cakes and ale?" Maria suggests that they get even with Malvolio, and they conspire to play a prank on him that Olivia is secretly in love with Malvolio. Maria forges a love letter in Olivia's handwriting style and leaves it in the garden for Malvolio to find. The letter asks Malvolio to wear cross-gartered yellow stockings, a color and fashion Olivia detests, to be rude to the rest of her servants, and to smile constantly around Olivia. Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, and Fabian secretly watch as Malvolio finds the letter and is both surprised and delighted. He follows the letter's instructions to demonstrate his feelings to Olivia. She is shocked by Malvolio's appearance and behavior, and believing he's mad, turns him over to Sir Toby. Malvolio's tormentors treat him as if he really is insane and lock him in a dark chamber. Feste visits Malvolio and mocks his professed insanity, both as himself and disguised as a priest named Sir Topaz. Meanwhile, Viola's twin brother Sebastian has been rescued by Antonio, another sea captain who previously fought Orsino's men. But despite the risk of capture, Antonio accompanies Sebastian to Illyria out of his admiration for Sebastian. Sir Toby and Fabian play another practical joke, convincing Sir Andrew to challenge Cesario to a duel, since each of them is terrified of a fight. Initially, the duel is broken up by Antonio, who mistakes Cesario for Sebastian. As a result, Orsino's officers arrest Antonio. At the same time, Sir Andrew mistakes Sebastian for Cesario and slaps him, prompting Sebastian to severely beat Sir Andrew. Olivia oversees the fight and chastises Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, and Fabian. She also mistakes Sebastian for Cesario and asks him to marry her. Even though he's shocked, he agrees, and Sebastian and Olivia are secretly married in a church. Finally, when Cesario and Sebastian appear in the presence of both Olivia and Orsino, they look on in wonder and confusion at their physical similarities. Finally, Viola reveals her true identity and is reunited with her brother. Orsino and Viola agree to marry, and Antonio is released. Fabian confesses to the plot against Malvolio and announces that Sir Toby has married Maria. Malvolio enters and swears revenge on his tormentors just before he stalks off, and Orsino sends Fabian to placate him. The play ends as the characters exit and leave Feste alone to sing a song. When we return, we'll look at some of the remarkable characters in Twelfth Night. Twelfth Night was the first Shakespeare play I'd ever watched all the way through, and I was immediately hooked because the themes were so timeless and the characters were so easy to understand and identify with. Viola and Sebastian are a sister and brother who are separated after a shipwreck, and each one winds up in Illyria, unaware that the other one is still alive and in the same land. Viola decides to disguise herself as a young page named Cesario in order to work for Duke Orsino. The Duke is in love with the idea of love. He says he will only marry the Countess Olivia, but there's no evidence that the two of them have ever met more than once, and so he stays melancholy because she won't marry him, and she stays melancholy because she's in mourning for the death of her father and her brother. Sir Toby Belch is the drunken uncle of Olivia. He's a very Falstaff-like character who's using his foolish companion Sir Andrew Aguecheek to pay for his drinks and revelry, with the understanding that Sir Andrew will eventually win over his niece Olivia. Sir Andrew is a fool, and most of the jokes go right over his head. This is a very similar relationship to the one between Iago and Rodrigo in Othello, but because this is a comedy and not a tragedy, Sir Toby doesn't kill Sir Andrew at the end. Maria is Olivia's gentlewoman who, despite his bad behavior, adores Sir Toby so much so that she plays a prank on Malvolio in order to impress him. Malvolio is Olivia's steward. He's very straight-laced and puritanical and looks down on the lighter people. But we also discover that he's secretly in love with Olivia. And finally, we have Feste, who is Olivia's very witty jester. As a fool, he's permitted to insult and mock others without being sanctioned for it. He, along with Fabian, Maria, Sir Toby, and Sir Andrew, join in on the prank on Malvolio. Coming up, we'll look at some of the plot devices and memorable scenes from Twelfth Night. Twelfth Night has always been considered one of Shakespeare's most popular and successful comedies, and a lot of that has to do with how easy it is to follow. One reason for this is because he used humorous plot devices to move along the action. Once again, we have disguised characters, in this case, Viola, a woman who disguises herself as a male page boy. This is similar to what Shakespeare did with Rosalind in As You Like It. Also, these women both seem to be transformed and grow in an uninhibited confidence while they're in costume, especially when it comes to teaching other people about what it means to be in love. In fact, like Rosalind, Viola also speaks to the man she loves and spurns a woman who mistakenly falls in love with her and winds up marrying someone else. Shakespeare loves to use mistaken identities, as he did with Hal and Ned Poins in Henry IV Parts 1 and 2, the Princess of France and her ladies in Love's Labour's Lost, and the Antipholus brothers and the Dromios in the Comedy of Errors. We also have the sea world invading the land world. Since most of the characters seem to be at a stalemate, shipwreck survivors, Viola and Sebastian, a pair of identical twins, come ashore and bring change that allows Orsino and Olivia to marry. Shakespeare also did this with Rosalind and Celia, who enter the forest world in As You Like It, Bottom and the couples, who enter the forest world in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Aegeon, who enters the world of Ephesus in the Comedy of Errors, Portia, who enters the world of Venice in The Merchant of Venice, the Princess of France and her ladies who enter the world of Navarre in Love's Labour's Lost, Helen, who enters the world of the King of France in All's Well That Ends Well, and Petruchio, who enters the world of Padua in The Taming of the Shrew. I also want to point out that in Shakespeare's time, a young boy actor played the role of Viola, a young woman, who disguises herself as a male eunuch, who then speaks to Olivia and imagines himself as a man in love with a woman. With plot devices like this, how could you miss? As far as memorable scenes go, let's just look at 4. First, in Act 1, Scene 5, Viola meets Olivia for the very first time, even though she's disguised as Cesario. It's interesting to see that by the end of this scene, Olivia confesses to herself that she's already in love with Cesario. Well, so much for mourning for her father and brother and waiting 7 years to get married. Next, in Act 2, Scene 5, we watch along with Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, and Fabian as Malvolio reads Maria's forged letter that convinces Malvolio that Olivia is in love with him. What really makes this scene funny is that the people who are hiding from Malvolio are very much visible to the audience, making the scene even more humorous. There's also a lot of action in Act 3, Scene 4. First, we see Malvolio enter, trying to impress Olivia by smiling, wearing cross-gartered yellow stockings, and emboldened by Maria's forged letter, he becomes very sexually aggressive when addressing the Countess. This is especially funny because up until this point, he'd always come across as very straight-laced and reserved. Later in the same scene, we see Viola and Sir Andrew Aguecheek engaged in a duel in which each of them is terrified of fighting and fears that the other is a fierce swordsman. And finally, in Act 4, Scene 2, we see Feste tormenting the imprisoned Malvolio both as himself and as Sir Topaz, a priest. And like Shylock at the end of The Merchant of Venice, Malvolio leaves the play bitter and dejected. Oh well, I guess you just can't please everyone. When we return, we'll look at some of the major themes that run through Twelfth Night. Some of the many themes that run through Twelfth Night include concealment, doting, and unrequited love. Early on in the play, Viola says to the sea captain, "Conceal me what I am." Well, this play is full of concealments. Viola conceals the fact that she is a woman. Malvolio conceals the fact that he is in love with Olivia. Maria conceals that she is the one who forges the letter in order to play the prank on Malvolio. Antonio conceals himself from the Illyrian authorities in order to look out for Sebastian. Olivia conceals the fact that she's in love with Cesario. Olivia and Sebastian conceal their secret wedding, and Feste the Jester conceals his identity from the confined Malvolio and pretends to be Sir Topaz. There's also a lot of doting in this play. Viola dotes on the Duke dotes on Olivia in turn dotes on Cesario, who is really Viola in disguise, and Antonio even dotes on Sebastian in a protective sort of way. Malvolio and Sir Andrew Aguecheek both dote on Olivia, but their loves are unrequited. And you can even make an argument that Maria dotes on Sir Toby Belch, even though he's aware of it, and they eventually marry. Two of the strongest themes that run through this play are rebirth and reunions. In Twelfth Night, Viola and Sebastian are both reborn after nearly being drowned in a shipwreck and are reunited in Illyria at the end of the play. You could also say that Olivia is reborn because she's gotten over her melancholy sufficiently enough to want to marry Sebastian, and Orsino is reborn after realizing that he's wasting his time chasing after Olivia and finally discovers that he's in love with Viola. We also see the rebirth and reunions of characters in other Shakespeare plays, including Leontes and Hermione in The Winter's Tale, Thaisa and Marina in Pericles, Prince of Tyre, and Aegeon and Amelia in The Comedy of Errors. Miranda and Prospero are reunited and reborn when their former associates are brought to the island in The Tempest. Juliet is briefly reborn at the end of Romeo and Juliet, but as we know, that didn't last. The same is true about King Lear and his daughter Cordelia's reunion. The King of France is literally reborn, as well as Helen in All's Well That Ends Well. Claudio is seemingly brought back from the dead in Measure for Measure. The same is true about Hero in Much Ado About Nothing, and Posthumus in Cymbeline. And finally, Rosalind is reunited with her father and future husband Orlando in As You Like It. When we return, we'll look at some of the most powerful lines in Twelfth Night. Unlike some of the other Shakespeare plays we've already looked at, many of the best lines in Twelfth Night are short. We'll get to them in just a moment, but I want to start off with the beginning of the play where we hear what is most likely the best-known opening line of any Shakespeare play. Orsino begins, "If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it, that surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die." That strain again, it had a dying fall. Oh, it came o'er my ear like the sweet sound that breathes upon a bank of violets, stealing and giving odor. Enough, no more. 'Tis not so sweet now as it was before. What he's saying is, if music feeds love and makes it stronger, give me too much of it, so much that it kills my longing for love and makes it go away. In other words, he's hoping that listening to too much music will eventually help him get over his unrequited love for Olivia. Feste the Jester really does steal the show with so many of his quick and witty sayings. As with the clown in King Lear and Touchstone in As You Like It, the fools usually deliver the most profound words in the entire play. Here are a few from Feste beginning in Act 1, Scene 5. "Many a good hanging prevents a bad marriage." Who could argue with that? "And the fool shall look to the madman." What he's saying is that a fool has to look after someone who's mad, because unlike the madman, the fool is only acting mad. What says Quinopolis? "Better a witty fool than a foolish wit." And later in Act 2, Scene 4, Feste adds these words of wisdom. "Pleasure will be paid one time or another." In other words, there's always a price to be paid for our pleasures and our sins, whether in this world or in the hereafter. And Act 1, Scene 5, Viola, dressed as Cesario, chastises Olivia, saying, "What is yours to bestow is not yours to reserve." What Viola means is that since Olivia is so beautiful, it would be a crime for her not to marry and have children and pass along her beauty to the next generation. This is an inducement to get Olivia to agree to marry Orsino. My favorite catty remark in any Shakespeare play still remains Rosalind disguised as Ganymede rebuking Phoebe for not returning Silvius's love for her. She says, "Down on your knees and thank heaven fasting for a good man's love. For I must tell you, friendly in your ear, sell when you can. You are not for all markets." But a close second would be Viola in Act 1, Scene 5. First, she says to Olivia, "Good madam, let me see your face." And Olivia responds, "Have you any commission from your lord to negotiate with my face? You are now out of your text. But we will draw the curtain and show you the picture." And she removes her veil, saying, "Look you, sir, is it not well done?" And Viola replies, as only another woman could, "Excellently done, if God did all." I also want to make sure that we include some of the beautiful writings enclosed in Maria's forged letter to Malvolio. Here he is in Act 2, Scene 5, reading a very significant piece of advice. Soft, here follows prose. "If this fall into thy hand, revolve. In my stars I am above thee, but be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them." What I love about this encouraging message is that everyone who ever got where they are started from where they were. In other words, don't let your past dictate who you are, but let it be a part of who you will become. And finally, we have Viola's beautiful time, untie this knot soliloquy in Act 2, Scene 2, when she realizes that Countess Olivia is actually in love with her. Indeed, there are many beautiful passages in this play, but this one serves as a perfect way to finish this section. "I left no ring with her. What means this, lady?" "Fortune forbid my outside have not charmed her. She made good view of me, indeed, so much that methought her eyes had lost her tongue, for she did speak in starts distractedly." "She loves me, sure. The cunning of her passion invites me in this churlish messenger. None of my lord's ring? Why, he sent her none." "I am the man. If it be so as 'tis, poor lady, she were better love a dream. Disguise, I see thou art wickedness, wherein the pregnant enemy does much. How easy is it for the proper false in women's waxen hearts to set their forms. Alas, our frailty is the cause, not we. For such as we are made of, such we be. How will this fadge? My master loves her dearly, and I, poor monster, fond as much on him, and she, mistaken, seems to dote on me. What will become of this? As I am man, my state is desperate for my master's love. As I am woman, now alas the day, what thriftless sighs shall poor Olivia breathe? O time, thou must untangle this, not I. It is too hard a knot for me to untie. When we return, we'll look at some of the major turning points in Twelfth Night and some correlations to the other Shakespeare plays. All right, now let's take a look at three major turning points in the play. The first one is in Act 1, Scene 5, when Viola is mistaken for a man by Olivia, who instantly falls in love with him, even though she said she would not marry for 7 years because she was still mourning the loss of her brother. I suppose the King of Navarre and his 3 fellow students would consider themselves lucky to only have to wait 1 year to marry the Princess of France and her ladies-in-waiting. Next, we have Act 3, Scene 4, when Malvolio, following the directions of Maria's letter, greets Olivia smiling and wearing cross-gartered yellow stockings, professing his love to Olivia, thinking she's in love with him. Well, at this point, there's really no going back for him because the cat is out of the bag. He's admitted he loves her, she thinks he's mad, and while he's imprisoned, she marries Sebastian. Talk about ruining somebody's day in a major way. And finally, also in Act 3, Scene 4, we have Sebastian arriving at Olivia's home and being mistaken by Olivia, Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, Fabian, and Feste for Cesario. This leads to Olivia and Sebastian quickly getting married, and Sir Toby and Sir Andrew getting severely beaten after they provoke the unsuspecting foreigner. And just as in the Commedia of Errors, The Two Gentlemen of Verona, Much Ado About Nothing, and As You Like It, all of the confusion is cleared up, paving the way for a happy ending of weddings. There are also some interesting correlations in Twelfth Night to some of the other Shakespeare plays. Olivia says that she wishes the Duke resembled Cesario. In Henry VI, Part 2, Margaret admits to Suffolk, her lover, "I tell thee, Pole, I thought King Henry had resembled thee in courage, courtship, and proportion." Some people are never satisfied. Although it's a comedy, Twelfth Night begins with Olivia mourning the death of her father and brother, as does Viola, even though in her case her brother Sebastian is still alive and is reunited with her at the end of the play. At the beginning of Hamlet, Hamlet is mourning over the loss of his father. Helen is mourning over the loss of her father in All's Well That Ends Well. Henry VI is mourning the loss of his father Henry V in Henry VI Part 1. And Lady Anne is mourning the loss of her father-in-law and husband in Richard III. Portia is not so much mourning the loss of her father as she is annoyed by his arrangements for her marriage in The Merchant of Venice. Petruchio seems to be completely ambivalent about the death of his father in The Taming of the Shrew, and Rosalind grieves over her father's banishment, with whom she is happily reunited at the end of As You Like It. And then, for contrast, the Princess of France mourns the death of her father at the very end of Love's Labour's Lost. Viola disguises herself as a boy and educates both Orsino and Olivia about love, just as Rosalind does for Orlando, Silvius, and Phoebe in As You Like It. Antonio risks danger by going into Illyria in order to help Sebastian. In The Merchant of Venice, a different Antonio risks danger by taking out a loan from Shylock in order to help out his friend Bassanio. Shakespeare loves to use melancholy characters in his plays. In Twelfth Night, we have Orsino and Olivia. In Hamlet, we have the title character. In As You Like It, we have Jaques, and in Pericles, Prince of Tyre, we have Pericles himself. Sir Toby Belch is constantly looking for sack, wine, canary, or just about any other alcoholic beverage he can find. He also seems to be a glutton and a mooch. For these reasons, it's easy to draw comparisons between him and Sir John Falstaff. In addition, Sir Toby is bleeding Sir Andrew Aguecheek dry by stringing him along in hopes of him successfully wooing his niece Olivia. In fact, he repeatedly asks Sir Andrew to send for more money. This is exactly what Iago does to Rodrigo in Othello. We also see Sir Toby and Sir Andrew getting beaten as a result of mistaken identities. We saw this with the Dromios in the Comedy of Errors and with Falstaff in the Merry Wives of Windsor. At the beginning of the play, Orsino revels in moody music, as does Jaques in As You Like It, Cleopatra while she's missing Mark Antony, and the deposed Richard II after he's been imprisoned. Both Viola and Sebastian come ashore in a foreign land after being shipwrecked. That's like Dromio and Antipholus in the Comedy of Errors, Pericles in Pericles, Prince of Tyre, and Miranda and Prospero in The Tempest. Feste the Jester sings a song about the wind and the rain, as does the Fool in King Lear in Act 3, Scene 2. And finally, Olivia would have been contracted to a maid if she didn't change her mind and marry Sebastian, just as Phoebe would have been contracted to marry a maid if she didn't change her mind and marry Silvius in As You Like It. When we return, we'll look at some of the interesting facts from Twelfth Night. In preparing to do this episode, I did some research and this is what I found. Twelfth Night was written between 1600 and 1601. The play takes place in the exotic and romantic setting of Illyria, which was an ancient region located on the eastern coast of the Adriatic Sea, which would be located today near Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Albania, and the city-state which has been proposed as the setting would today be located in Dubrovnik, Croatia. Viola and Sebastian refer to their homelands as Messalene. Some scholars have suggested that Messalene is meant to correspond either to Mytilene in Greece or Messina in Italy, which would reinforce a more likely Mediterranean setting for the play. Although most of the characters' names are Italian, Sir Toby Belch appears to be English, and Viola's use of the expression "westward ho" was a typical cry of 16th century London boatmen. In addition, Antonio recommends that Sebastian lodge at the Elephant, which was a pub located not too far from the Globe Theatre in London. Shakespeare used several different sources for this play, including an Italian production called Glingonati, which means the deceived ones, written in 1531. It's also suspected that Orsino's name refers to Virginio Orsini, Duke of Bracciano, an Italian nobleman who visited London in the winter of 1600. The title Twelfth Night refers to the 12th night after Christmas, which would make it the evening of January 5th, which is also called the eve of the Feast of Epiphany. This was originally a Catholic holiday and was considered an occasion for revelry, like other Christian feasts. Historically, servants often dressed up as their master, and their masters served the servants. There was often cake involved, in which tokens were placed in slices to determine who would be the king and queen of misrule for the day. In the actual play, Sir Toby represents misrule, while Malvolio represents excessive rule. The play's subtitle, What You Will, refers to the topsy-turvy celebration festival in which you're allowed to do what you will. By the way, Twelfth Night was the only Shakespeare play that included the subtitle when it was first published. Malvolio's name means ill-wisher, just as Benvolio's name in Romeo and Juliet meant well-wisher. Cesario's name means one-self-king. The play talks about Puritans. These were very strict Protestants who wanted the theaters shut down and revelry stopped. In fact, they actually succeeded in closing down the theaters 26 years after Shakespeare's death, from 1642 to 1660. And finally, while discussing the 1988 Riverside Theater version of Twelfth Night, director Kenneth Branagh explained how through a friend of a friend, he was able to get Paul McCartney to give permission to include one of his songs, Once Upon a Long Ago, in order to help promote the play. Composer Patrick Doyle arranged the song and adapted it into Come Away, Death. Wow! Imagine finding a way to use a song written by a Beatle and included in a project about Shakespeare. How ingenious. Oh well, when we return, we'll look at some of the great actors in the 1980 BBC Shakespeare version of Twelfth Night. All right, now let's take a look at some of the actors in the 1980 BBC Shakespeare version of Twelfth Night. Alec McCowan, who plays Malvolio, also played chorus in the BBC version of Henry V in 1983, and the Bishop of Ely in Kenneth Branagh's version of Henry V in 1989. Robert Hardy, who plays Sir Toby Belch, also played Sir Thomas Middleton in Sense and Sensibility with Emma Thompson in 1995, and Illingworth in The Lost World in 2001. Annette Crosbie, who plays Maria, also played the Duchess of York in Richard III in 1983, and Dionysa of Tarsus in Pericles, Prince of Tyre in 1984. Arthur Hewlett, who plays the priest, also played Adam in As You Like It in 1978, and Shepard in The Winter's Tale in 1981. David Webb, who plays a servant, also played Gower in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V in 1989. The outstanding Trevor Peacock, who plays Feste the Jester, also played Lord Talbot in Henry VI Part 1, Jack Cade in The Sheriff in Henry VI Part 2, both in 1983, Bolt in Pericles, Prince of Tyre in 1984, the title role in Titus Andronicus in 1985, and the first gravedigger in Mel Gibson's version of Hamlet in 1990. Felicity Kendall, who plays Viola, also played Mrs. Evangeline Harcourt in the 2021 version of Anything Goes. And Robert Lindsay, who plays Fabian, also played Lysander in A Midsummer Night's Dream and Captain Dumaine in All's Well That Ends Well, both in 1981, Iachimo in Cymbeline in 1982, and Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing in 1984. Also in 1984, he starred in a revival of Me and My Girl opposite Emma Thompson, earning him a Tony Award. And in 2021, Lindsay starred as Moonface Martin in a revival of Anything Goes, in which he was reunited with Felicity Kendall, his 1980 Twelfth Night co-star, after 41 years. I also want you to check out the 1988 Kenneth Branagh directed version of Twelfth Night. It's got an impressive cast. Composer Patrick Doyle did a great job on the music, as he did in Henry V and As You Like It. Richard Briers, who plays Malvolio, also played Bardolph in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V in 1989, Leonato in Much Ado About Nothing in 1993, Polonius in Hamlet in 1996, and Sir Nathaniel in Love's Labour's Lost in 2000. Julian Gartside, who plays Valentine, also played the Duke of Bretagne in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V in 1989. Sean Pendergast, who plays Fabian, also played Bates in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V in 1989. James Simmons, who played Sir Andrew Aguecheek, also played the Duke of York in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V in 1989. Anton Lesser, who plays Feste, also played Troilus in the BBC Shakespeare version of Troilus and Cressida in 1981, Edgar in King Lear in 1982, and Exeter in The Hollow Crown. And lastly, Christopher Ravenscroft, who plays Duke Orsino, also played various roles in Pericles, Prince of Tyre in 1984, Montjoy the Herald in Kenneth Branagh's version of Henry V in 1989, and various roles in the Royal Shakespeare production of The Life and Adventures of Nicholas Nickleby in 1982. Now stay tuned for today's trivia challenge, which is called ER. All right, now it's time for today's trivia challenge called ER. You are to name the play in which the following pirates are referenced or appear. Number 1, Walter Whitmore. Number 2, Ragozine. And number 3, Minas. When we return, I'll have the answers for you, and we'll finish up with some relevant lessons from Twelfth Night. Okay, now let's see how you did on today's trivia challenge called ER. You are to name the play in which the following pirates are referenced or appear. Number 1, Walter Whitmore. That was in Henry VI, Part 2. Number 2, Ragozine. His head was in Measure for Measure. And number 3, Minas. He was in Antony and Cleopatra. Now let's finish up with some relevant lessons from Twelfth Night. First, if you love someone, don't be afraid to let them know. Remember, he who hesitates is lost. Don't miss your chance for true happiness by farming out the task to someone else. Second, when you're a guest in someone else's home or business, act like a guest. Continually demonstrate respect for others, especially when you're on their turf. And finally, make the most of your God-given talents and gifts. As St. Matthew said in chapter 5, verse 15, "Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but upon a candlestick, that it may shine to all that are in the house. Viola tells Olivia in Act 1, Scene 5, what is yours to bestow is not yours to reserve. In other words, don't shine your light under a bushel basket. I'm Dave Romeo, and thank you for watching this episode of Romeo on Shakespeare. Please join me next time when a weak English king disenfranchises his son and unleashes his queen's wrath on just about everyone.